Hi, and welcome to another edition of Jules Voto's Photo Focus. In this video, I want to talk about a camera I have talked about several times before. One of my favorite all-time cameras, and in fact, until I went mirrorless, it was my favorite camera of all time, the Nikon D810. I purchased this camera in late 2014. Camera was introduced in the middle of 2014. So later this year, this camera will be 10 years old. Now, I did what I called a short, long-term review of the D810 back in July of 2022. At that time, it was approaching 140,000 actuations. Right now, in early 2024, I am up to 158,000 actuations. This camera has shot over 158,000 pictures. As I said back in 2022, and I will repeat it again, I have never had an issue with this camera. The only thing that has ever been done to this camera, and I've done it myself, is to clean the sensor. It's an amazing workhorse camera. I went to mirrorless in early 2019, and I thought the mirrorless would completely replace this camera. I got the Z6, then the Z7, and in March of 2023, when the Z8 was introduced, I bought that and sold my Z7. But I am still using this camera. For certain things, I still prefer it. And one of those things is studio type headshots. I do a lot of headshots for hospitals. They're done on location. I bring a backdrop and several lights with me. And this camera just works out great for that. I use the 70 to 200 f4 f-mount lens. Only thing I've done is replace Nikon's foot with the Kirk Enterprises one. I think it just works out better, and it has a dovetail to mount on my tripod. So, I mean, this combination just works out tremendously. I don't need anything faster. I don't need any better autofocus. The autofocus on this works out fine. I usually shoot at 5.6. This lens is more than sharp enough, and it's a great combination. 36 megapixels, again, is more than enough. And this camera has an image size mode where you can set it for the proportion of 8:10, 5:4 image size. And that works out great because I also use it for high school senior portraits. Again, studio type portraits at the school where I bring in lighting and backdrop. And that works out perfect because 8:10 is one of the most popular print sizes, and it scales right up to 8:10 when I have it set for the 5:4 image ratio. I have the MB D12 grip for this camera, which gives you a vertical shutter release, and you can move the focus point with the control on the back, but I don't need it. I don't use it when this camera's on a tripod. Now, I did use it when I was using this camera for events and other things, but really don't need to use it anymore. Another lens I used with this camera very successfully was the 24 to 120 f4 f-mount zoom. And this lens worked out great with this camera. But I can't say enough about the D810. I thought by now this camera would have been retired or sold, but I don't think I will ever part with this camera. Now, recently I did a comparison video comparing the D810, the Z6, and the Nikon Z8 at high ISO. So I will put a link in the description below to that video. And this camera at high ISO compares very favorably to the Z8. Yes, the Z8 is better, but it's a much newer camera. with newer technology. It does have a higher megapixel count as well. But this camera holds up very well in comparison to the Z8. Now, one of the reasons why I like using this camera so much for headshots, sometimes I'll be at a location for a better part of a day. Cameras on the tripod, people are coming in and out having their headshots done. And I don't have to worry about the battery. One battery will last me for several days with this camera shooting that way. So that's great. It's always at the ready. I don't turn it off, even if it's going to be a half hour, an hour, whatever between photographs. I don't bother to turn it off. I don't need to, because like I said, the battery just keeps going. And the batteries I have for this camera were purchased back in 2014. So they're not new batteries. They're coming up on 10 years old themselves. So it's just a very reliable piece of equipment. And that is the most important thing to me. When you are earning your living at photography, or anything for that matter, you want reliable tools. So this camera is reliable, it keeps going, and it never breaks down. So I'm going to put a link to my short, long-term D810 review from last year. Also to that more recent video looking at the noise comparison at high ISO between this and those other cameras I mentioned. And another thing, if you're a landscape photographer, now I use the Z8 if I'm shooting landscapes now for several reasons, but this camera still is a great landscape camera. And I'm not sure what the current prices are now for used D810s, but I'm sure you could pick them up for under $1,000, maybe well under $1,000. And if you're a landscape shooter, it's a great camera at 36 megapixels, at ISO of 64. The dynamic range is great, and I think these cameras work out great for landscape shooting. So I would like to hear your thoughts. I would like to know if you have a D810. How many exposures have you made? How long have you owned yours? Have you ever had it repaired? So in conclusion, let me just say that in 2024, the Nikon D810 is still a very relevant camera. No, it's not the best camera for sports or wildlife, birds in flight, things like that. And it's not the best camera in very low light. Not that the noise is a problem. The noise at high ISO is excellent. It's the focus. When you're in a real low light situation, the autofocus isn't all that great. But for almost anything else, I believe that in 2024, this is still an excellent camera. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and tap that bell so you will be alerted anytime I come out with a new video. And I usually publish a new video every Monday morning at 11 a.m. and also on Wednesday mornings at 11 a.m. And I welcome your questions and your comments, and I usually try to respond to any and all questions and comments. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.